Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Perspective. We'll be talking about the Noor Mukadam case now that we've seen Zahir Jafar, the culprit, apprehended. Lots of issues and lots of questions arise as to the justice system, as to what was being said as far as this case was concerned from the very beginning. We want to talk about the legal ramifications, not only of this case, which became a very high profile case, a very unfortunate, very tragic case, but also lots of other cases and the problems that it indicates within our judicial system. Of course, the government's endeavor to reform the criminal justice system. All of that today. A little later on the program, we'll also be talking about the Russian visit of the Prime Minister and particularly the developments that we hope for in the energy sector vis-a-vis the gas pipeline and our bilateral relationship with Russia. All of that today on Perspective. I have with me Arif Chaudhry Sahab, who is a legal expert. Thank you for being with us. And Farzana Bari, who is an HR activist. Thank you for joining us for the first part of the program. Ji, Arif Sahab, overall, of course, this was a very highly publicized case. We saw, as far as Noor Mukadam case was concerned, there was a lot that was said about, there was a lot being said as to the fact that because of money, because of power, because of social position, he would get away with it as far as this murder is concerned. Because of the legal loopholes, they would get away with it. Because of the timelines that our judicial system offers, that can be used as an scapegoat, often are used also by victims. A lot of that was said. In your opinion, as a lawyer of your experience, what are some of the issues you think this case itself raises for our society? Can you take us through that?
Thank you very much. I would say that this case is a litmus test for criminal justice system of this country, and that is not only up to this decision by the Sessions Court, but I mean to say that up to Supreme Court, final verdict by Supreme Court, and then appeal before the mercy appeal before the president, whatever is going to be. So far, the entire case was attended to by the government, particularly the Prime Minister Imran Khan. He himself was monitoring in a way and taking keen interest in the conclusion of the case. So the prosecution and investigators, they were all working in unison. And moreover, I would say that the role of media, which has been admitted by the father of deceased, I also see, would like to add that, it was second to none. Media played its role to the entire. So if we see from that perspective, so this case, although was a high profile case, no matter howsoever powerful the accused was and is even today, but the media and all those eyes which were fixed on the case, they played a pivotal role. But I think, as for so far, we should not expect anything very big, because as far as the conclusion of this case is concerned, it has to go to High Court, and then finally it has to go to Supreme Court, and then mercy appeal. But the problem which we face in our country is that we believe in technicalities. Our criminal justice system depends upon technicalities more than the real substantial justice, and that's what I have seen in the courts.
Does it depend on the technicalities, or are they used very effectively as a tool? When we want to prolong cases, when we want to, to benefit the other side, whenever they want to use it, the lacunas that you're talking about, the technicalities, so to speak, that you are talking about.
I mean both. Technicalities do exist, and its exploitation takes place. So when, it's they use jointly, because the usage of those technicalities, if they had not been available, then naturally, it would not have hampered our judicial system. Although, there was a time when this, criminal cases like murder cases, they were after commitment proceedings, they were fixed on day-to-day basis, and it used to get concluded within, shortest possible time. But right now, things have gone so far, so far away from the real crux of the matter that, such like cases, they are lingering on in the courts and technicalities have taken place, more so, in our system because otherwise, if the judges are well versed with the criminal justice system. Those technicalities even cannot hamper the way. But first of all, because as we say that administration of justice is the true administration of justice is the firmest pillar of good governance. So it is the duty of the government to first of all attend to all those technicalities which are coming on the way of administration of
Arisab,
criminal
let me
justice
come back
system.
to you. I want to talk more about that. You're talking about the fact that, in terms of what the government proposes, even when they talk about the criminal justice reform, and we saw a recent move by the government towards that also. But let me go to Farzana. Farzana, overall, okay, so this case was taken up by the media. It was a high profile case. It was picked up. And certainly that has benefited in this case, as far as Noor Mukadam's death, as far as bringing the culprit to trial, all of those things. But let's look at Qandil Baloch's case, for example. What does it say, in your opinion, about where we are as a society that apprehends its culprits, it apprehends its murders? Are we still doing that? Or is Noor Mukadam the example of that one lone example where it happened, whether it happened because of media attention or it happened because it was, I don't know if lucky is the right word to use or not, but it managed to get the kind of attention that it has?
Absolutely. I think although I'm very happy and relieved, and particularly for Noor and Noor's family and for the rest of us, who are very, we are all very looking towards this case. But I think the verdict that is also at the lower court, that is an exception, not the rule. The rule in this country is Qandil Baloch case. If you look at all the high-profile cases, whether it is Qandil Baloch or whether it's Samia Imran or whether it's 4 women, who got killed in Kohistan, you name a, high-profile case, and there is a, there was never a conviction in that case. So there is a pattern where consistently the criminal justice system fails to dispense justice to women who are victims of violence. So in this case, one thing is, I think that both parties come from the sort of a strong class background. They are both come from a well-off sort of a background. However, I feel that the real test will come when obviously this case will go. I mean, it has taken almost 7 months, to have this verdict. After that, it has already been mentioned that it will go into, the High Court and then Supreme Court and then President. And let's see what happens, whether Noor will get to justice or not. I think although it's a very welcoming we do welcome this verdict and this judgment.
I want to ask Arif Saab about this. Let me come back to you. Arif Saab, this is the thing, this point has been raised a couple of times also, whether you also mentioned it, that it's obviously going to go down. It has to, the appellate process, as far as whoever the accused is, even if it's Zahir Jaffer in this case, has to be followed, and that is regardless of, whatever case it is. But do you think that once a judgment comes in, technically speaking, the trial court, doesn't it get very difficult for it to be, of course there are appeals that are heard and then overturned also, decisions are overturned every day, but it does become a tad difficult, does it not, once this kind of a judgment comes in at the trial court level?
I don't think so, because so far what we have experienced over, I am in this profession for last more than 40 years. And this is my personal experience that, this statement, we can not trust in that, because it doesn't happen that way, because the problem is that as far as session court is concerned, if you see, conviction rate is very high up to session court, because the eyes are very closely watching, the trial, and, there are certain other, factors. Then so many things are ignored at that level. And, if you see that, in this case, particular case, there were few things, as far as the testimony of that guy was concerned, the investigating officer. who was, not coming up from himself. He was answering in yes or no. And so many things which were required to be answered and that he had to volunteer. He didn't volunteer. And, so then you had to bring all other, forensic, evidence and other stuff. And then, it resulted into conviction. But as far as high courts are, Supreme Courts are concerned, they are very much concerned about those technicalities. I would like to quote one example of a very, very famous case. If you remember, I would call it notorious case, when a guy, murdered a person, in the vicinity of this district court's Rawalpindi. And it was a daylight murder case. And, who was the victim? The person who he claimed that, he had illicit relations with his mother. And then, the case was tried, and finally when it went to Supreme Court, I was sitting over there, and Justice Khosa, who was known to be a real legal expert in criminal cases, he acquitted the accused. And, by saying, his observations I cannot forget. And he said, oh, I know, everybody is aware of this. People saw this murder, but we are bound by law and we are bound by all these things. All these things, what did he mean? Cite, inspection and notes and other things. And, if someone did not, volunteer anything, and, he just was concealing certain facts. And, if he says that, the natural witness was not there, and, eyewitnesses have been planted. And, because normally you cannot get the, witnesses so bold to, who are related to,
you're saying that this person that you're talking about managed to get off on a technicality, and by a renowned, learned judge like Khosa Saab, which is what you're talking about, which happens in a lot of cases. So law then offers, doesn't offer, but allows for people to escape because of those lacunas that you're talking about. Let's talk about reform. What about the reform that the government wants to move towards? The criminal justice system reforms that, for the very reasons that they say are that, that because of these technicalities, because the criminals are not apprehended in a timely manner, justice delayed, all of those things, then why not move towards them? We've seen a lot of criticism over those reforms also.
Yeah. First of all, we have to, I would recommend and I would suggest through your program, the government should amend our, Evidence Act. And, it should be brought in line with the present day needs. Forensic science, although it is mentioned, but the use of forensic science has to be mandatory. And, not only use of sciences, forensic sciences to be made mandatory, but you have to provide for forensic experts also. And as far as, the force law enforcement agencies are concerned, you should separate law enforcing agencies from those who are investigators. And you need to have real investigators who are trained by the colleges like John Jay College of Criminal Justice System. And unfortunately, we don't have even one in Pakistan so far, and so many people
those are
who
very long-term goals that you're talking about. For somebody, I want to come to this, and I want your opinion on this. Let me come back to you. Let me go to Farzana Saiba with this. Chief Farzana, overall, as a human rights activist, you must have seen a trillion cases where, like you mentioned, Arif Saab also mentioned one case where, you see criminals, known criminals, having done crime in daylight, go scot-free because of technicalities in law. But overall, don't you feel that when we talk about goals like this, which are very legit, what Arif Saab is saying, of course, it's very true for people who practice in courts, for lawyers who practice every day, who encounter these issues, who feel for them, you as a human rights activist who obviously has a different kind of vision when you look at these kind of cases and you feel for them and you see these people go scot-free. But how do we get away with trying to deal with this in the meantime? When we're looking at these long-term goals, when we talk about getting better investigators, we talk about getting amendments in different acts, provisions, even though we're moving towards it now.
Look, I mean, although in the long term we do need all those reforms, because on the technicalities, because police doesn't do its job, as you know, that in terms of evidence gathering, things are all, messed up at that stage, and then there is no victim protection, witness protection. So, and then there is a male bias within the judiciary, and I mean, I have no qualm to say that there is a lot of corruption in judiciary as well now. This is now common sense. People say, oh, you don't want to, you used to say you should have a very well-known lawyer, then that will influence the judge decision. But now people say, okay, you don't need a lawyer, you just have a judge, you can buy a judge to your side. So I think when the lack of confidence, this is the level of confidence people have in judicial system, so it's a very, very serious issue. And what we see that in, all that big, like people are somehow getting away, by committing crimes. But normally, I think it's the low section of society, marginalized section of society, or people who are poor, they are the ones who are not getting any justice. So, but coming back to your question, what needs to be done, straight away today is, I think, judiciary, it is the responsibility. I think it's the judiciary the superior judiciary has to sit and see how they could really monitor, the judgments within the, which is happening. And there should be some...
Is it fair when we talk about superior judiciary, they are, of course, and I think Arif Saab is a better person certainly than me to answer this, but don't you feel that as far as superior judiciary is concerned, they are bound by what they have in front of them? And they have to follow the law. When the law allows for these kind of lacunas, then again, Arif Saab, then again we move towards the amendment side of things. So it's a circular argument, right?
Sure, but I think justice... Yeah. Okay, Arif Saab can go ahead, and I think he's probably...
I'll come back to you, Farzana. Thank you for your patience. Arif Saab.
Yeah, actually, the short-term goal right now for the government should be that, they should sensitize the provincial governments about those marginalized communities and segments of society, such as women, children. So the police should also be sensitized on those, segments. And whatever happens, if, we for the time being, we just forget about, these technicalities. We just focus on the force, the law enforcing agencies. If the government takes care of that, they have very, very sensible and, humane, which is really very difficult and very subjective. But at least, when you are controlling those people, who have to register the cases, first of all, they should get rid of that conservative type, stereotype FIR, which is, normally 99%. Same way as
again, you're talking about large-scale reform, right? Then we talk about, FIR is one thing, then we talk about the bureaucracy side of things, then we talk about hurdles there also, and that's, of course, right now we're talking about the criminal side of things, but then the civil is another whole, matter entirely.
No, but as far as the superior judiciary is concerned, if we just attend to this issue, there's appointment of judges for that matter. If you have very good judges, as far that really things get better, because the administration of justice can be done through those, people who have command over law and who have, as far as the superior judiciary is concerned, they have got vast powers. They, it's not, as far as Supreme Court is concerned, what is judge-made law? It is the law made by the judges. And the judge-made law means that, if you want to go away with those technicalities and you want to do substantial justice, nobody is going to stop you. No law is going to stop you. As far as,
unfortunately, we're out of time, but I think that, Arif Saab, you've raised a very interesting point, and Farzana was so patient today. Thank you so much for being with us, Farzana Sahiba. But overall, I think you've thrown the buck entirely in the judiciary's court when you say that, they should to hell with technicalities, for the lack of a better word, and they should go for where the fairness is. That's a whole other debate, and I think I want to discuss that at some other time. Thank you so much for being with us, Arif Chaudhry Saab, Farzana Bari. Thank you for being with us. We will be taking a short break and come back and talk about what Russia can mean for us in the energy sector particularly. Right, welcome back. We're talking about the Prime Minister's visit to Russia and the ramifications, the effects of it vis-a-vis the energy sector particularly, what it can mean for Pakistan. And of course, the speculations in terms of where we are at this time, in terms of what we've achieved from this visit. All of that. I have with me Shahid Amin, who's a former ambassador. Shahid Saab, overall, we've seen a lot of speculations also, considering what's happening, that the internal situation within Russia at this time, what's happening. Our stance, of course, has remained very clear. We've had, even before the visit, the Prime Minister sat down and said with a local Russian channel and said that we are not a part of any we don't believe in a military solution. He doesn't believe in a military solution, and he believes that everything that can be accomplished through dialogue. He brought up the issues of bilateral relationships, but relationship between Russia and Pakistan, but also particularly as far as Kashmir is concerned, as far as Afghanistan is concerned, the humanitarian crisis, all of those things. But in terms of energy particularly, the tangibles out of this trip, in the wake of the situation at this time, what are the tangibles in your opinion?
I think the Prime Minister's visit was very successful. It will take Russian relations many steps ahead, and we will see in the near future specific concrete cooperation, particularly in the energy sector. But Russia is a great power. I was ambassador in Russia during the 80s when things were very bad. Russia treating Pakistan as an enemy, which was a very dangerous thing for us. We are a relatively small country. Russia was a superpower. It remains a great power. So it is in the national interest of Pakistan to have friendly relations with Russia. There is so much that can happen in terms of bilateral and regional cooperation, including SCO, terrorism. In the context of Afghanistan, the two countries have many common views, and we should collaborate with each other. However, let us say when he went, although when the visit was planned, it was not anticipated that there's going to be a war-like situation. I think the Prime Minister was well advised, and he correctly kept away from anything which would suggest that we are being partisan either to Russia or to the other side. A kind of neutrality was maintained.
When we talk about the Prime Minister's visit, I think that, like you are saying, he was very clear that we're not part of any bloc. He was very clear that we're not taking any sides. But as far as our bilateral relationship is concerned, like you are saying, Russia remains very important for Pakistan, and in the wake of our earlier relationship with Russia, for the Prime Minister and Pakistan for this time to have this kind of interactive foreign policy, independent foreign policy, where we saw the China visit, and now we've seen the Russian visit, and we're seeing the kind of inroads that Pakistan is trying to make in terms of our diplomacy overall. Isn't this a huge step towards that, regardless of what's happening at this time within Russia?
Well, I mean, we have a very strong relationship with China, which we think will increase with time. With Russia also, there is an incremental progress. However, this talk sometime in Pakistan of some kind of an alliance, that is entirely premature. Russia continues to have a very strong relationship with India and will not be prepared to dilute those relations for the sake of Pakistan. But it's not a zero-sum game. We can have Russia-Pakistan relations make good progress, irrespective of what Russia does with India. So I think the Prime Minister's visit did help, and we kept out of any suggestion that we are being partisan. I think the Americans were concerned, and I think after the visit and what the Prime Minister said in Moscow, Washington should also feel satisfied that we did not fall into a kind of a trap of supporting Russia in this context. However, let us discuss Ukraine for a minute. I think what is happening in Ukraine is awful. Russia has violated international law like anything. It has, there are some characteristics of international law, like you don't cross borders, you respect the sovereign integrity and territorial integrity of a state, and you do not interfere in the internal affairs of the state. These are well-established principles of international law, and all of them have been violated. Whatever Russia's justification, this sets a very bad example, because there are other large countries in the world living next door to small countries, including India and Pakistan. So this is a kind of an encouragement to other regional bullies that they can impose their will on small countries. So I think this
Ambassador, overall, in terms of tangibles from the trip are concerned, from this visit, are concerned, how do you see, let's talk about the energy sector particularly. Do you think that the gas pipeline, do you think that as far as our momentum of moving ahead on, for example, the gas pipeline is concerned, will now perhaps be smoother, faster after this visit?
No doubt that will happen, and I'm sure there has been an understanding, although it has not yet been announced. Russia already has been involved in this project for some time. Now we will see specific progress. But there are other gas line projects which are important for Pakistan. For instance, TAPI from Turkmenistan via Afghanistan to Pakistan. As you know, in Central Asia, Russia continues to have a significant influence. So with Russian blessing, this project can also move forward. CASA, another project in which Russia and Pakistan can be partnered. I think we can at some stage expect Russia to get take advantage also of CPEC. Because if you look at where CPEC is ending, it is just about 200 miles from Russian territory. And Central Siberia is a very important industrial and agricultural area of Russia. So there are immense possibilities. The important thing is that we should now do good homework and try to work out convergences. There should be specific meetings between businessmen and policymakers dealing with economic and commercial matters. And I think the geo-economic dimension should be given more attention than the geostrategic thing. Okay, we have good relations with Russia. We should be improved in various fields, including strategic cooperation. But let us concentrate on the economic side and the commercial side more than the other aspects.
But Ambassador, overall, in terms of how, in terms of diplomacy particularly, vis-a-vis India, for example, India's own relationship with Russia, in the wake of that, and the fact that the Prime Minister was able to bring up the issue of Kashmir successfully, it was a prolonged meeting with President Putin, and Kashmir was definitely discussed. All of those things, and the fact that the narrative that India tried to give out to the world of isolation as far as Pakistan is concerned, all of those things have really been positively affected, wouldn't you say, by this trip?
Yeah, very much so. Remember, meeting is usually about half an hour. It lasted 3 hours. So obviously, the two of them got along well and discussed matters at length. And I'm quite right. Our Prime Minister is the Kashmir issue and Indian behavior in general, which is creating tensions in this area. So this was an opportunity to put across our point of view in an atmosphere where Putin would be receptive. So I think this much has been achieved. However, please remember, when India did this Article 340 and other things, the Russian ambassador in Delhi had openly supported the Indian stance on Kashmir, even in respect of these. So it will take effort.
That stance now seems to have changed, right?
Well, let us hope it will change, especially now that Prime Minister had such a long conversation with Putin in an atmosphere. And our Prime Minister has got this good quality, which I admire.
But Russia has now said that it's a as far as Pakistan and Kashmir, Pakistan and India are concerned, they have said that it's a bilateral issue. They have said that, it needs to be taken up.
Yeah. And this is not, it's very different from the Indian stance, which is that Kashmir is an integral part of India. So when Russia says India and Pakistan should settle this Kashmir dispute through talks, it means they are not accepting the Indian version. Otherwise, there is no opportunity for talks at all if it is an integral part of India. So that is an encouraging sign. However, the point is, in diplomacy, you have to be patient. You have to build on whatever has been achieved now. A good platform has been set up. And I think in the coming days, you will see specific progress. And energy sector is one where Russia is very strong in this area with technology and whatnot, gas and oil and war. So this is a concrete area. And in the past, remember, they helped explore oil in Pakistan even in the late 60s. Then they built up the steel mill in Karachi. So we have had a history of collaboration. Russia is not
Right. Unfortunately, we're out of time. Thank you so much for being with us. Arif Chaudhry Saab, thank you for being with us. Farzana Bari, thank you for joining us. Shahid Amin Saab, thank you for being with us. As far as the verdict in Noor Mukadam case is concerned, certainly it's been celebrated all over, I would say, the world, but it does raise issues pertaining to our justice system. It also raises issues about all of the other cases that sadly are not as high profile, and perhaps we need to take a moment or many moments to ponder on where we lack as far as our criminal justice system is concerned. The government's move towards reforming that also, and critique just for critique versus getting together and trying to reform this justice system, all of those things. Also the Russian visit and the fact that Pakistan's trying interactive foreign policy, Pakistan's independent foreign policy, Pakistan's active diplomacy to be seen as a country that does not have any bloc, but will talk to its neighbors, will talk for mutual interests also, we've seen, can be seen as far as this particular visit to Russia is concerned. Thank you for being with us. Thank you for joining us today. Have a great weekend.